The Federal Court of Australia recently prescribed something of an industrial strength barbed wire enema for Toyota, vis-a-vis the appeal over that nasty, dodgy DPF business a few years ago and the company's attendant misleading, deceptive scumbaggery generally. So that's nice. But in the same breath, the court also gave Toyota something of a $1 billion reach around in the form of reduced compensation payable to owners of those dodgy vehicles. So I guess it's true what Chrissy Amphlett so provocatively opined back in 1985. There is a fine, fine line between pleasure and pain. I'm John Cadogan from AutoExpert.com.au and I get new cars cheap. Australia only. Website. Card. Somewhere up there. Captain's log. Stardate 3141592654. Toyota Australia has pie on its face. See what I did there. Following the federal court telling it to jam its appeal largely where His Royal Highness King Chilla III does not wash. Like, dude, he has a servant for that now, and look me in the eye and tell me this is exactly the kind of responsibility that you would delegate to, were you ever to wear that ridiculous golden hat. There's a job description in the palace and everything, like, wash maiden. Perfect. Problem solved.
This report is sponsored by NordVPN. Now, I'm not a hardcore IT guy, but I've heard enough, especially recently, about data breaches, scams and hacks to know that being online can be inherently risky and costly. You don't have to be tech savvy to use NordVPN. It's a simple one-stop cybersecurity solution. One click and you are protected from hackers, malware and pop-ups across as many as 6 devices. NordVPN is the world's fastest VPN. I don't even notice it running in the background, frankly, and it only costs about as much as a cup of coffee to keep your data, your identity and your devices secure every month. NordVPN can also save you money because you can assign your virtual location to another country where, for example, flights and accommodation might be cheaper than they are back at home. The same goes for streaming services, and you can access live sporting events and other content that may not be available where you actually live. It's a pretty small price to pay for cybersecurity. Not to mention the potential savings also on the table. Go to nordvpn.com/AEJC to get a huge discount off your plan plus 4 months free. Totally risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/AEJC. Link in the description. And thanks to Nord for sponsoring this episode.
We live in fictional times, which is a roundabout way of saying that you could make a movie out of this one, only it might not be credible. So, the one thing I do know is that I would pay a Chilla III ransom to have been a fly on the wall for the inevitable conference call back to the land of the rising sun on this one. Because on the one hand, you'd have the, yes, got it. See that? Kill something every day, just to retain operational proficiency, would be my advice. On the one hand, you've got the conversation to Toshi-san, the admission about, yes, well, they did tell us to go fuck ourselves in relation to the appeal. And then on the other hand, you've got the saving, because potentially $2.3 billion worth of golden river that gets turned on and hosed all over the owners of those defective vehicles has just been reduced to $1.3 billion. So perhaps we should start at the beginning of this story. If you own or owned one of these shitboxes and you want to know what this means for you. So the story so far is that a year ago-ish, in April of 2022, the Federal Court of Shitsville found that Toyota Australia were misleading or deceptive cocks. Not in those words, but hardly something of a surprise, I think you'd agree. This issue orbits 264,170 vehicles with dodgy DPFs, and most of them have that appalling 2.8 litre diesel engine that just the intern could have done a better job with the DPF integration. I think you'd agree. And it orbits Hilux, Fortuner and softcock Land Cruiser, which Prado owners refer to as Prados, but obviously everyone else, they're a bit like that at Dingo Piss Creek. It's pretty clear. So they were sold from October 2015 until April of 2020, which is nearly 5 years. And what this means, in my estimation, is that Toyota systematically lied to owners and potential owners of these vehicles more than 250,000 times for roughly 5 years. And there's a problem with big numbers, right? Because big numbers are reiterated all the time. Like, you go to the friggin' observatory and some wonk with a telescope tells you that there's 3 trillion stars in the sky, and you go, yeah, it's about right. 264,170 is something of a big number, and when it's a big number of big diesel shitters like that, then it would stretch, have a guess, in a conga line. How far would it stretch, dude? Guess. How about Melbourne to Brisbane? That's how many vehicles we're talking about, with less than 2 metres in between each one. So Melbourne to Brisbane, that's a lot of lies about defective DPF installations. And admittedly, most of these lies appear, at least to me, to be lies of omission. And we'll get to lies in a minute, because lying and allegations of being a liar, that's kind of a big call. And I'll tell you exactly why I have formed this honest personal opinion of Toyota's behaviour in just a sec. So the aggregate damages, which is a weird thing for the federal court to impose, and they have to be spectacular cocks to cop a slap on the wrist like that. But anyway, it was $2.3 billion, and this was based on the diminution of value on average of those vehicles being 17.5% attributable to their shitbox R&D integration of the DPF installation, okay? And what happened just the other day was that 17.5 turned into 10% because someone wearing a wig and a dress went, nah, 10% now, at the same time as dismissing the appeal. That's kind of what happened in a nutshell, okay? Following the federal court's determination, Toyota in June of 2022 decided to appeal, and they made a statement in which they said that their appeal, quote, includes challenges to the factual and legal basis for the award of damages, particularly in circumstances where many of the group members did not experience the DPF issue. And to me, that's a little bit like saying, well, if a tree falls in the forest and the DPF doesn't shit itself, are we still misleading, deceptive mother lovers? To which I would retort, yes, dude, you are. No reference to individuals is made throughout this report. I'm merely commenting, using my honest personal opinion, on the collective corporate behaviour of cockheads. Corporate cockheads, not individual cockheads. They went on, when perhaps they should have just STFU'd, in my view, and said, at the same time, we understand some customers have experienced inconvenience and discomfort from this issue. For this, we apologise. I've seen people dripping with contrition, remorse, sorrow, regret, empathy. This ain't that. Like, dude, if your wife comes home from a business trip just one day early and discovers you performing CPR on Tiffany from the office in the spa of your ensuite at home, and you say, after some initial outburst, obviously there's going to be that. I've had 5 ex-wives, dude. Been there. If you say, honey, I understand that you have experienced inconvenience and discomfort from this issue, and for that I apologise. If that is your statement following committing a wrong of this nature against a person you allegedly care about, then all I can say about that is make sure you've got the knives in the kitchen locked away. Pro tip. The company that can't shut up went on and not shut it up in this way, quote, "We have worked continuously since becoming aware of DPF concerns on an effective resolution for affected customers. At every step, we have implemented customer-focused and technically grounded remedies to resolve customers' concerns." I'd suggest, if resolving this issue is a 12-step program, that 11 of those steps was sticking your head in the sand like a frickin' multinational ostrich and just effectively denying that the problem even existed. So I can't agree with those two paragraphs of your statement. I really can't, Big T, and you know how much I love you. And then at the end, there's this, blah, 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 "have been and remain committed to assisting any customer whose vehicle experiences the DPF issue and to providing free of charge repairs." To which I would respectfully retort, well, how fucking magnanimous of you, after lying about it, mainly by omission, for all of those years and fucking people around royally, having many of them return to the dealership umpteen times and not getting an effective resolution. Now you're offering them a free of charge repair. It hardly seems enough. On this business of lying, okay, because lying seems straightforward, you know, with a gun at your head or vox popping somebody in the street about lying, they go, "Oh yeah, it's simple." And it kind of is in some situations. Like, if you're ever, and I hope you're not, but just as a thought experiment, if you're ever in that room without the door handles on the inside and the police are interrogating you about the stabbing murder of another individual and you say, "Oh, I didn't stab that dude. And unfortunately for you, the clothes that you were wearing, because obviously now you'll be wearing a tissue paper jumpsuit with those little matching booties, very fetching. But the clothes that you were wearing are sort of saturated in the victim's blood, and your fingerprints are all over the murder weapon, as is the victim's blood, and 12 CCTV cameras appear to have captured you doing it, as well as 30 witnesses of unimpeachable character who all made statements because they hung around for the cops later. Then that's a fairly straightforward lie, because it's simply a misrepresentation of the truth. And when you look at Professor Harry G. Frankfurt's brilliant book on bullshit, he talks about lying and what lying is. And lying, according to Prof. F, is that it's a person who intentionally misrepresents one of two things, which would be either the truth or what they believe the truth to be. This is different, of course, to somebody just being wrong about the facts and, you know, sprouting about it. Like, for example, if a parallel me in a parallel universe thinks that there's an all-powerful, all-seeing fairy on the moon who looks down with his all-seeing eye on me and really cares about me and loves me to the extent that when I die, he will hoover up my soul and invite me into the basement on the moon, where he'll teach me to play the harp with all the other self-righteous twats down there in the basement. And the one thing I must not do while I live is think too hard about Narelle next door and her boobies. Provided I don't do that, I'll be fine. But if I do that, I'm going in the furnace for rather a long time. If I believe that, and I then go out and convince other people, attempt to convince other people that Goddo on the moon really exists and you got to believe, and just don't think about Narelle's boobies and you'll be getting the free harp lessons, then that's not lying. That's just being a nut. Okay, so you could basically be making false representations, I guess, without lying. But I don't see, is a roundabout way of saying, I don't see how you can make deceptive misrepresentations about your conduct without lying. It may be possible to do that, but I've thought about it, and I just can't see a way that I would ever be capable of doing that or able to do that. Or is there a logical framework where you can be deceptive and misrepresentative and at the same time not tell a lie? And I really don't think there is, because deception is about thinking one thing and representing the other thing. And if you're doing that, then are you not lying? got to ask yourself. So it seems to me that Toyota lied a lot about this, mainly just by not admitting that the defects existed with this vehicle and fucking umpteen people around royally, so well done there, all those guests, So I don't see how they can do that, and that's what I'm referring to when I claim that they were lying about it, okay? I'm referring to the act of deception, misrepresenting the true state of play with those vehicles. Probably hear from the lawyers about that, but hey, wouldn't be the first time. So in the original court case, this is incredible to me too, those mother lovers actually stood up and said words to the effect of, "The car's not defective. It's just a component," right? That's like saying, I didn't shoot that man. My trigger finger malfunctioned. This is the calibre of argument that was put in the original court case, I'm led to believe, okay? And it just makes me think, is there any wonder why there's a popular perception that the car industry is just full of grubs? Like, just knee-deep in slimy scumbags, because they can stand up, apparently with a straight face, and instruct their representation to put forward the case that, the car wasn't defective. That's just a dodgy component. As if this is somehow a way to sidestep consumer law obligations. And then when I think about all of the statements that I've ever heard from all of the empty suits representing car makers everywhere, and how fucking glossy and holier than thou they want the company to appear so that you can just love them. And then when push comes to shove in court, they say things like this. It's like slimy scumbaggery inception. It's just slimy scumbags inside slimy scumbags inside slimy scumbags, all the way from the shop floor to the boardroom. And I'm not just talking about Toyota, I'm talking about a big fat slice of the car industry, because, dude, that's how they roll. It's so depressing. It's funny, but it's depressing. And then you put lawyers together with executives from corporations with no moral compass. It's just perfect, isn't it? Their conduct is just perfect. The hapless owners of these vehicles could not just bring the fucking DPF system into the service department for a bit of a software upgrade or to have some components changed out. It had to come wrapped in the fucking car like 20 times. So there's that about, it's just a defective part, right? So anyway, the court just kind of told Toyota to jam its appeal, but they reduced the compensation from 17.5% down to 10%, which is inexplicable at this stage to me. I haven't gotten to the bottom of the rationale on that. And it's also unclear at this stage exactly how that compensation is going to be determined for individual members of the class action, right? But superficially, if you paid 50 grand for your defective shitbox and the diminution of its value stemming from Toyota's deceptive misrepresentation and lies generally, cockhead conduct would be another way to think about this, mother levery. If that diminution in value is 10%, then 5 grand for you, dude. At least you're back to an even playing field, I suppose, even though the legal funding mob is going to take a fee out of your compensation, obviously. But if you multiply that by 260,000 vehicles, if you said 50 grand on average per vehicle, that's 5 grand in compensation, times 260,000 vehicles, the total compensation, 1.3 billion, which is a lot more than a rounding error on the balance sheet, even in Shitsvillian micro pesos, I'd suggest. So, a spokesperson for Toyota Australia told Costello's cockheads at Drive that they are diligently, quote, reviewing the decision of the full court of the Federal Court of Australia. Now, investigative shit stirring 101. If you've ever wanted to be a proper investigative shit stirrer, the one thing you've got to do is always listen really hard for what they're not saying. And to me, they're not saying, okay, we did the wrong thing, we're going to own that and make it right. They never say that. They're relying on the fact that all of those marketing billions over all of those years, makes Toyota a religion in some camps. And these camps believe that Toyota has some magical powers that, for example, Mazda does not, when nothing could be further from the truth. Instead, what we're hearing right now is, quote, "We remain committed to assisting any customer whose vehicle has experienced the issue and to providing a free-of-charge remedy that has been available since 2020. How magnanimous. Free of charge, available since 5 years after we started to deploy those defective shitboxes on an unsuspecting public. So, well done. Quote, "Toyota will consider the judgment carefully before making any further comment." Hopefully they can see fit to launch another appeal, perhaps in front of the High Court of Australia, where they can blame their trigger finger for firing the defective DPF shitbox gun. I'd like to see that. And all they'd have to do is find someone sufficiently brazen to make such a claim in front of a full bench of men all wearing matching wigs and black dresses. Not that there's anything weird about that.